Are you looking for books for your teenage daughter? Do you love biographies or want your children to kind of study those Christian heroes of the past? Well, today I have 5 Christian biographies that I want to share with you. Hello and welcome back to Wholehearted Homemaking. I am mama to 7. My name is Heather. I'm mama to 7, ages 2 to 14, and at the moment 6 of those are girls and I only have 1 boy. So there tends to be a emphasis in our family on women's biographies. We read the men's ones too, but my girls obviously love to learn about women in history. And so I have read various biographies and I love them, but there are a few Christian biographies that I feel like every child should read at some point. And so I wanted to share those with you. I do have on my blog a must-read teens list that I have accumulated from a myriad of other people. I have not pre-read all of them, so please take those as other people's suggestions, not necessarily my recommendation. I am still working through it to decide exactly what are my reads that I want my kids to have before high school. But there are a couple of biographies that I know I want my children to read, and so I wanted to share those with you. So first up is my very old version on The Hiding Place. The Hiding Place tells the story of Corrie ten Boom, and if you are not familiar with that, she is a Danish Christian who hid Jewish people. She did a lot more than that as well, but I'm not going to give all that away. I highly recommend you check it out, and also if you want to be convicted, read her other books as well. She is an amazing woman with an amazing testimony. She survived the Holocaust. She did some amazing things, but she is also very open about what her faults are and where she needed to grow in the Lord. And so I highly encourage you to read anything by Corrie ten Boom, but The Hiding Place is wonderful. Mine has pictures from the old movie, which is not great cinema, but it's a great story. And so I highly recommend you check that out. I would recommend, if you don't read any others from my list, have your child read The Hiding Place. It's a wonderful job. If you're looking for something that's a little less graphic, this isn't too graphic. But if you want a little less graphic, try the YWAM, Youth with a Mission biographies, Christian Heroes Then and Now by Corrie ten Boom. It actually takes out any graphic and it is wonderful for all ages. All right, next I have Evidence Not Seen by Darlene Deibler Rose. Speaking of graphic, this book has some images that are forever seared into my brain, but it is an amazing testimony. This is, again, another person who lived during World War II and survived a Japanese concentration camp. Her story is so impactful, and it is one that has resonated with me for many years. I use many of the instances that she shared as encouragement to women to walk a Christian life and to stand up and be bold witnesses for the Lord. This is highly recommended. And again, if you only had 2 from the list, these are the 2. These are the must reads. I highly recommend them. My daughter will be reading, she likes medical things, so I'm not too worried about the graphic. So she'll be reading this next year as a sophomore. However, because of some of the graphic, it is not any sexual in nature, but it is gross. Let's just say jungle health issues. But there are some other things that go on, and it is such an amazing testimony, and I highly encourage you to read this as an adult. All of these books for Christian mothers, you should read them, but this one is a wonderful one. So those are the 2 I highly recommend for all high schoolers. Now the rest I still recommend, but if they didn't read them here till they were adults, that would be fine. So the next one I have is by Rosalind Goforth. Now, you may have heard of her husband, Jonathan Goforth. They are missionaries from Canada to China, and they lived during the Boxer Rebellion there. And this is not so much a biography. It's called How I Know God Answers Prayer, and it is her personal testimony. And so it is biographical, but it also focuses on specific prayers that are answered. And it is heartbreaking and heart-wrenching story, but it is such a testimony of God's faith and of how we as Christians can follow after him even in the most difficult and dire situations. This is a wonderful read for all women, but it is one of those that I really appreciate her humility, I guess is what I'm getting at. And so if you haven't read this, it's How I Know God Answers Prayer by Rosalind Goforth, and it is a wonderful biography. Next one is one that is actually not one I've read. Sorry, but it's by Elizabeth Elliot. So I feel like I can recommend almost anything by Elizabeth Elliot and be safe. This is A Chance to Die. It is about Amy Carmichael. I am in the process of reading it at the moment, and I Amy Carmichael is just, she was, if you don't know, Amy Carmichael was a missionary from Ireland to India. There were some other places along the way, but she ran a ministry for orphan children in India, and it is heart-wrenching ministry. But she is one of my children's favorite Christian heroes. Again, the YWAM is better suited for a younger audience, but for high schoolers, I think this would be fine. What I've read of it so far. But like I said, it's written by Elizabeth Elliot, who also really found her to be an encouragement. Amy Carmichael has many books as well that you can read in her own handwriting, and also her poetry, which my oldest daughter and I really love, is available. But it tells her story, and she rescues little girls from the temple where they were sacrificed and sent as for orgies and things in their temples. I mean, just horrible, horrible situations. And she rescues them, and she helps them to trust in the Lord and provides a home for them at Dohnavur. And it's just a really amazing testimony. It is Amy Carmichael. So like I said, I haven't finished it, but I recommend A Chance to Die by Elizabeth Elliot regarding Amy Carmichael. I should have grabbed Elizabeth Elliot's. So really, there's 6. If you haven't read, it's the reason I don't have it is my daughter's reading it this year. If you haven't read Through the Gates of Splendor by Elizabeth Elliot, that is the testimony of Elizabeth Elliot and her family, the Saints, the Flemings, and I know there's another and I'm forgetting, and their ministry to the Aka. Again, that is very violent. It is kind of graphic. But it is a beautiful testimony for the Lord, and he gets the glory through it all. So Through the Gates of Splendor, I'll try to throw a picture up here for you, but is another wonderful option. So I guess I have 6. And the last one I have for you is it's an odd one. It's called The Pastor's Wife, and it's by Sabina Wurmbrand. It's been a couple of years since I read this, so I can't remember how graphic it is because her husband's is very, very graphic. Sabina and Richard Wurmbrand are actually Messianic Christians in Romania. They survived the Nazi persecution, and then the history coming in. The Russians came in, and she specifically in her book describes the Russians as being much worse than the Nazis, which is really saying something from a Jewish person. And there were a lot of atrocities. Hers is not. Her husband is much more graphic. I do encourage, if you haven't read Torture for Christ and you can stomach it, to go read it. It is a treatise against loving those who are doing wrong to you, and not condemning the person, but condemning maybe what they're following. And Sabina does a great job of doing that as well. Her life is very different, and as a woman and as a mother, it is heart-wrenching to know what has happened. She is in Romania. If you don't know, when the Russians came in, they were quite violent. They're communists. They were against all religion. Her husband was the only one who stood up in a giant convention of Christian leaders to say this is wrong and we need to stand up for Christ. And both of them paid a price for their stance in following the Bible and following Christ. She was imprisoned. This talks about her imprisonment. It talks about her ministry before she was in prison and after she was in prison. They also have a child. It talks about that. And it is a remarkable story. And not that there aren't Christian heroes in times when it's not war and occupation, but you can see truly more clearly what the price of following Christ is when you look at some of these Christian heroes. And Sabina Wurmbrand does a wonderful job, again, just like her husband, pointing out that we are not hating the communist people there. We hate the communist regime and what it teaches, but we love the people, and they need Jesus. And she does a wonderful job of sharing that. If you're familiar with Voice of Martyrs, Sabina and Richard Wurmbrand are the founders of Voice of the Martyrs. And so you can check this out. I believe there's a movie out. I haven't seen her movie, so you may want to preview that as well. But I recommend this. I feel like in our given current circumstances around the world that both Richard and Sabina Wurmbrand's biographies are very pertinent to our children today and can be a source of encouragement. As I said, all of them face trials, hard times, and the reason that they are Christian heroes is not because of some remarkable strength that they have, but that they illustrate and demonstrate what trusting in Christ is and leaning on his strength completely. So those are my 6 biographies that I think all teen girls should read, and definitely all Christian mothers. because they are just a source of encouragement in our walk with the Lord. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you again for watching, and let us go forth and strive to serve the Lord and our families wholeheartedly.